Alright, so I'm going to be showing the quick setup for the cloud saving service from Unity. The first thing we'll do is show my setup. Right now I only have a player move thing that sets the capsule to where the mouse position is on left click. Nothing going on here. I have a player script. I'm going to open that up and we see we don't have anything, so let's create some sample data. Make this a struct, and I'm going to add a public int for XP, and we'll add position in here, but instead of saving our vector 3 or 2, I'm going to be creating a custom struct for that. The online serialization for cloud save does not like vector 3s or 2s, so we're going to be using this custom struct to save it. Alright, so we serialize both of our structs, and we'll actually add this data in here. And I'll be adding this player data onto our player. Alright, so we want to save our data during play mode, so we'll create a method for that. But first we need to interact with our cloud saved SDK. So in order to load the SDK, we need to install the packages. Go to Package Manager, and there's a couple tabs on 2022. You can find services filter right here. If not, just scroll until you find the authentication. Go ahead and install that. Okay, so upon first launch of a service, we have this prompt here that wants us to generate a project ID. So we're going to go ahead and create our project ID. Just link it to your organization here, and it'll generate the ID for you. So now we'll go ahead and install the cloud save package. Okay, so that's done. So we'll create our interaction here. So in the cloud saving script, it's empty right now, but we'll start here. So now we create the script that interacts with our SDKs. So if we take a look at our instructions here, we need to initialize first our Unity service. So we'll go ahead and copy the method here, and that will give us our initialization. Now we need to log in our player. We'll use anonymous for now. This won't work for the same person across different devices. Obviously you need to sign them in, but this will do for saving example. So the task here comes from threading that task, so we'll import that. And then we'll simply call this after we have initialized our services. So after we've done that, we should be able to sign in. And the last step here is to actually save our data. So let's take a look on how that's done. We can see here our data needs to be saved as a dictionary key value pair. So it's very similar to our player prefs if you've used that before. So we'll paste this method in here and we'll take a look at what we need to change. So instead of passing a key value from a string, we'll actually pass in an object, and our key will be a string we pass in the method. So that'll look like this. We'll create a generic, and this way we can pass any type of data we want. So we'll just have T here, and that will be our data. We'll just call it data if we want. And this will have a string of value. So here we'll pass our value as a key. We can actually rename this key. And then our value will be our data. Data is already taken, so let's call it in data. Alright, so this will be the data passed on from our method. And we'll actually make this static, so we can just call this directly. And that should pretty much take care of that. We can just go to our player script and save this data. So we'll be taking a look at how quickly that's done. I'll create a method in here to make things a little bit easier to understand. You don't want to have everything in one class, of course. So we'll have a context menu. So this will be able to save our data just by right-clicking click on the script, and let's call our cloud saving script, and then we'll do save some data, and then we'll pass in our data that we have right now. And we're getting an error saying that we're not passing in our key. So let's pass in our key. We'll call this player data, and that should pretty much take care of that. Put a debug in there so we know that we have saved data. Right, so currently our data is empty, and we'll just set up the XP in the inspector, but for positioning we actually want to assign that in here. So let's do that. Let's do the player position.x equals transform that position.x, and then we'll do the same thing for y. It's a quick and dirty way of doing this. Obviously you want to make things a little bit nicer and separate your saving from your player. So we should be able to change our inspector field for the XP here. We'll move the player first. We can see we already have signed in successfully. Then we put our 6,000 XP, and we should be able to see 6 and 4 when we save our position. So let's go ahead and hit save. So our data was saved. Let's take a look at our cloud save. So we'll load our dashboard. We make sure we select the correct project. I have a couple in here, but I already know which one to look for. Make sure it matches the one in your project settings. Now, under live ops, we go to find player management. Here we could find our anonymous user. And under cloud save tab, we could see that our data should be here, and it is. We check the values, and 6,000 and 6.4. I'm sorry, 6 and 4. So we could see 6 and 4. So now what we need to do is load this data back. So we got the saving working. Let's load this data so when we start, our player should be able to just load and go here. So let's create that right now. Let's go to our cloud saving script. And in here we'll do the same thing. We'll just look at the documentation and we'll see the fetch items. And this will return us a dictionary as well, but with a string as our value. So let's do that. Let's load some data. And instead of returning a void, we're going to return a task. And this task will be of type T, right? So T will be our data that we want back, and we want to specify what type of data. In this case will be player data, but we don't want to add that in the saving script to keep it a little bit more modular. Let's only add a string for our key. Then we'll pass our key here, and we'll pass our key here as well. And the reason why it's yelling at me now is because it's not returning the type, and also we should specify that it's generic here. So we'll go ahead and actually return that data. So how do we return an object from this string? We'll use a utility like JSON utility, but I recommend you use JSON.NET. But this video is just a quick thing. So our data will be our save data key. This is actually not data, this is data string. And then we'll pass this into our data, which will be a JSON utility from JSON type T, and then we pass our data string. Like I said, you could use JSON.NET, of course. Then we'll return our data. We can put the debug here if we want, so we know that it's done. And that should pretty much take care of loading. Let's create a method for that. So because our operation returns a task, we need to actually async void this. So we can actually await our data that comes from that method. So we'll do cloud saving. Should have this method as static, so we can use it here very easily. So we'll have an async static task. So here we load some data, and we pass in our player data type as the type we want. Remove that. And it's yelling at me because we need to actually await this. So let's await this data. So after we await that data, we actually assign this data to our player. So let's first start with the position. So we'll just set the transform that position to equal a new struct of vector3, or we can do vector2 in this case. And then we'll pass in our data.playerPose.x and data.playerPose.y until code knows. And then from there we assign our XP as well. So player data.xp equals data.xp. And this could be loaded. So now we have the whole setup here, and we should be able to load, and our player would be able to set its position up here. So let's see if that works. Of course, we need to wait till it logs in. So it's logged in. XP is 0, player's at 0. We'll go ahead and load. And there you have it. Our player has loaded our previous position, and we have our 6,000 XP here. So that pretty much takes care of saving on the cloud. We'll be taking a look at how to persist this data between the same player on different devices by creating a login. Thanks for watching.